Hello and welcome to Mind Your Mind podcast, a podcast where we talk about life, mind, heart, universe, everything and nothing at all. Today, I'm very excited for this episode because we are going to talk about happiness. Happiness, which is a concept that we all crave to understand but often tend to misunderstand. And if you have ever wondered what does happiness really mean in this messy modern world, today's episode is for you. As always, I have Ozan with me and I have a very special guest today, Rachna Jethwani. She's someone I have had the joy of meeting personally as well in one of her programs called Parents to Be Retreat, which was hosted by Cedar and Branch. It was one of the most grounding, heart opening experiences I have had during this huge life transition into motherhood. And talking about Rachna, her work doesn't just check all the boxes of wellness, I think it transforms the space you are in. She calls herself a burnout coach, which we are going to dig about in this episode, of course, a community builder, and the founder of Cedar and Branch, which where she creates gatherings rooted in emotional safety, authenticity, and deep reconnection. She helps high achievers shift out of the survival mode and back into their bodies, their joy, and their purpose. Her work bridges modern neuroscience with ancient wisdom, making happiness feel less like a goal and more like a practice. So I'm so excited and looking forward to this one. Welcome, Rachna, first of all. Tell us, how are you feeling?
Thank you so much, Hannah, for that really warm and heartfelt introduction. I am truly delighted and excited to be here with you and Ozan to have this conversation. So thank you for having me.
We are excited too.
Yeah, that's a perfect match, mixing the ancient wisdom and the also modern science about it and chasing happiness. That's what we're all about. And, I'm a professional burnouter. I don't know if that's a word. I have phases where I just burn myself out. So yeah, I'm really curious about what you're gonna say today.
Yeah, that unfortunately, Ozan, is the world we're living in, right? Where being in burnout is more the norm than not being, right? And especially if you're part of certain groups, like parents, for example, two-thirds of the parents are in burnout, healthcare professionals, more than 50%, and then corporate is where everyone associates burnout with. But it just, unfortunately, that's become our life. And so that's why I see my mission as just helping people feel better because in everything we do, ultimately, if we go deeper and dig down, we're doing it with the hopes that it'll make us feel good, that it'll make us feel better. And unfortunately, we tend to be working based on very like externally referenced ways versus being internally sourced of what really works for me as an individual, as a being. And I think that's a big part of it. But we'll get into all sorts of things here, I'm sure, with these topics of burnout to happiness, because really burnout is where someone might start and happiness is doesn't matter where you start. That's what everyone is hoping to achieve in this lifetime.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so Rachna, there is one thing that I really feel, correct me if I'm wrong, burnout usually crops from comparison, you know, and that just steals away everything. When you start comparing what you have achieved versus what people in your age group have achieved, you always fall short, you always feel you're lagging behind, and that just makes you,
Mhm.
chase
Yeah.
chase the, chase the unknown.
Mhm.
Like, there's no set goal, but you just want to do this and then this, then that. And even the sense of achievement is, you never arrive to that state of, feeling successful or
Yes.
feeling happy with
Mhm.
your achievements. Can you
Very
throw some light on that here?
Yes, absolutely. You hit on a very important topic, comparison, especially comparison in today's world with social media, right? Back in the day, comparison, keeping up with the Joneses was you knew very little about other people's lives. It was just small snippets. Now you just see the best version of their life, and our brains are wired for comparison. And our brains have these like annoying features, which actually make it really hard where when we compare, we sometimes lose context, right? Of like, we don't even compare, oh, this is a person who is sort of in my own demographic, living a life similar to mine and seems to have a better life. We don't stop there. We compare ourselves. We know a lot about celebrity lives, right? So our brain shuts off the fact that it's Beyonce's life that I'm looking at. If I see a inside look at her life, my brain will start comparing with it as if it's what I should have also achieved in my life. Beyonce is probably a 40-year-old something. I'm a 40-year-old something. So that doesn't help at all. And burnout, tying it back to burnout, one of the reasons burnout happens is when there is unrelentless or relentless demand and it meets unmeetable needs, right? Or unmeetable expectations. So you have this demand on you that just never goes away. So parenting is a perfect example. And then you've set these expectations that are essentially unmeetable because they're based on comparison, because they're based on these external factors. And our brain, like I said, like for example, on an Olympic podium, um, there are three people standing on the podium. Who do you think is the happiest person?
I would say someone who stood first.
Yes. Who do you think is the least happy out of the three?
The third one.
Second one.
No, the
Oh.
second. You know why? Because
The
the
first
second
place
one is
loser.
comparing themselves to the
Yeah,
first one and being like, I just missed out. The third one is just happy to be there on the podium. So
that's
that's
so
how
true.
comparison can mess us up, right? Like in absolutes, second is better than third, but in reality, the third one's having a good time, the second one's not. So, hmm.
That is so true, actually. Comparison is the thief of joy. So
Yes.
well put. And
Mhm.
we live externally, measuring worth by success, by output, even
Mhm.
likes on social media.
Yes.
And that's what just makes us disconnect completely from the inner compass. And that is the root, the heart of burnout. It's not just doing too much, it's
Yes.
losing touch with what truly matters, what truly makes you happy, what truly nourishes you. And I think today we are going to touch upon happiness, not the Instagram glossy version of happiness, but the heart, the soul, the science of happiness.
Yes.
So,
So I would like, yeah, go ahead.
yes, please, please.
So I think happiness, I think we start talking about it helps to like break happiness into different components because happiness is again a slightly nebulous concept, right? But happiness, when it has been researched, you can break it up into three parts. It is enjoyment. You want to have some of that in life. It's appreciation. Having the gratitude is obviously a big factor. And the good thing is it's studied and it's more and more people are bringing it into their life. And then the third part is meaning. So when you pursue those three and have balance across enjoyment, appreciation, and meaning, that's when you can have that inner felt sense of happiness, right? If you just focus only on enjoyment, you'll start seeing that it feels hollow, right? If you're just having a good time going out and having fun all the time, it probably doesn't feel enough. If you just sit there and appreciate all the time, at some point you'd be like, yeah, this is great, but there are more things I want. And then that's where the third, where it's like, if you pursue things that are truly meaningful, right, that are internally sourced, driven by your inside compass versus externally referenced, when you build your life around those three areas, you can start truly having a life where you feel satisfied and fulfilled. And one of the biggest factors that gets you there, based on research, is connections. Everyone, I'm
Okay.
sure a lot of people at this point are aware of the 85-year-old Harvard study, right, which followed people and on their deathbed, what made the difference was the ones who had the most fulfilled life were the ones who had the best relationships, highest quality of relationships. And
Mhm.
then personally, when I think of connection, to me, it's actually way bigger than just the quality of your relationships. It is your connection to yourself, because that's where everything starts. That's what you said, like that internal compass that we have lost touch with. It is the connection with people around you, your friends, family, society, community. And then beyond that, it is your connection to something greater, something People have different names for it, but it could be connection to nature, connection to source, spirit, consciousness. We'll call it, let's say, spirituality. But I think when you bring together those three elements of connection, then you're really in this solid, grounded place to live your life.
You just gave
Very
us gold
insightful.
there. Yeah, this is gold.
Oh, I know, I
First,
agree.
yeah, I want to stick with the happiness one. So we said enjoyment, appreciation, and what was the third one?
Meaning, meaning.
Meaning.
Meaning. Yeah. And do you think, when, people are always like chasing happiness, and I think the burnout happens when we are chasing happiness. We want to, be better, we want to look better and everything, we want to win. Do you think like the reason we cannot reach that is because we are not balancing all three? And we are just focusing on maybe one, maybe only the enjoyment we are focusing, and we are going out and having partying, and that somehow it's not lasting happiness. Or if you just appreciate, it's very helpful, but you also kind of get bored, right? Or the meaning, of course, you're missing a little bit of a joy to the
Right.
happiness. How do you
So I think
balance all three then?
yeah. So I think it's a combination, right? It is the fact that a lot of people are not consciously trying to balance all three. And then you pair that up with the fact that our brain is actually not wired for happiness. And I think that's a big aha moment for many people as well, right? Because when we look at our history as a species, right, as primitive being and then like this modern being, this luxury of pursuing well-being and happiness is very recent. It's the last couple hundred years that our lives are, for most of us, there are of course people in dangerous areas, but we have safe lives where we have the time and the resources and the ability to pursue well-being and happiness. Before that, we were either the primitive caveman truly in survival mode for hundreds and thousands of years and then struggling still, right? So our brain is wired for survival, not happiness. What that means is it will, if you're in a place where, let's say, you have a job that's not great and you're just used to a certain level of life, which is not that fun, and when you try to step out of it, your brain will actually try very hard to bring you back to your previous state, because in that previous state, you were safe. Your brain only cares about your safety. So the fact that anytime you try to step out, it's new, it's different, and new and different, the brain almost translated as dangerous. It doesn't know what will happen. So our brain is really working against us. So I think remembering that really helps. That brain is a tool designed for survival, not happiness. Happiness is a relatively very new concept to humanity to be able to pursue that. And then knowing that, and in Western society especially, we overemphasize the importance of the brain and the mind, right? That's very much the case. And we forget that our brain actually is not even that reliable. Like if you take the example of optical illusions, right? You know it, right? The two dots are exactly the same size or whatever the optical illusion is, but your brain has you convinced that they're not. And the same thing happens is it's this concept of miswanting, where you will think that something out in the future will make you so happy. All your problems will be gone. You will be so happy when you get to that point. And what actually happens is when you get to that point, you have highly overestimated sometimes how happy you will get. And you get a little bit of a dopamine hit. So your happiness goes up, but the brain very quickly adapts to that new state. And then you come back to your baseline. So I think, Ozar, to your point, the problem is everyone puts their happiness out in the future to this one thing. When it'll happen, it'll solve everything.
A
Instead,
conditional happiness kind of thing.
yes, conditional happiness, and overestimates the impact of that happiness. And it's true even to the extent of like people who like get the news that they are in remission after like a cancer diagnosis or something. You would think they would now completely live their life differently. They've got this news that their cancer is cured, but same thing, a spike, and then they go back to their baseline. So I think the remedy against that is not putting your goal of happiness out there. That's when we are always running and never arriving. It is bringing that into the now moment. That is the only thing that exists. Working on raising your baseline versus waiting just for that spike or hit. So sort of sounds like a cliche, but putting things along the journey, right? If you have a goal, goals are great. That's how you grow. That's how you expand. But don't make your happiness conditional once that goal happens. Be happy while achieving that goal. which is a very different concept from how we live our life. We just say, I'll be happy once I get the promotion. I'll be happy once someone else does something differently, versus I'm going to enjoy the process of working towards my promotion and everything that comes with it. So, mhm,
This is so well put. And you know what? The conclusion out of all the science you gave us
mhm,
was something we were already aware of. But uh, exactly how you said, we are so rushed towards the conclusions of everything,
mhm.
and we just from this podcast, I'm sure whoever is listening, they just want to know like what exactly is the conclusion of it, so that I know the meat of it, and I don't have to go through the entire 30 minutes of listening, so that I just know what is the conclusion. Like I know that this is the science,
Mhm.
this is how happiness works, and this is how I'm going to achieve it. So okay, done. And this is something so basic. We have all been reading quotes about happiness,
Right.
that it's about the journey, it's never about the destination. But today we got to know the real meaning of why is it about the journey and the real science behind it. And thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's actually how I got into this space deeper and deeper. I grew up in a very spiritual home. I grew up in India, so I feel like these ancient practices are much more a part of life there. And then it was very much in my home. But being a very like cognitively driven person and very much a mind driven person, understanding the science of things is really what brought me back to the path of spirituality. And that's my goal as well. It's just like in our hyper achievement focused world, I want science to be that doorway through which I help open up people's lives to what's beyond science,
Mhm.
to the world of into the world of where there's greater meaning and greater connection. And yeah.
Yeah, you really
I
have.
yeah, I love that because people always see them so separated and kind of like opposite sides, the spirituality versus
Yeah.
science. But actually, the more you get into the science, especially the quantum mechanics, the more you can prove how limited our minds are. All the perception, everything what we have is very limited, and that actually allows so much more information on the spiritual side. So it's kind of like it merges at one point. Definitely, there is a point of collusion there. So I completely echo what you say in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you hear the phrase, right? Like people who are working on it, that science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. I see it a bit differently, was two sides of the same coin sort of implies that they're equals. Again, my personal point of view and perspective. But to me, it's like spirituality or this something greater than us that we are connected to is infinite, immeasurable, right? It's like almost like if you think of it, the night sky, it is
Mhm.
has billions of stars and galaxies and everything that's happening. And science is that telescope. Sure, it's really great that now you can see some of the planets. It becomes more real, but so that's why I think it's not equal. Like science is just the measured parts of the great beyond. And then there's just so much more there. And I think it helps us as sometimes as skeptical human beings, as cynical human beings, or as like very logical, mind driven human beings. Once you have evidence and something's been measured in certain areas, you are then able to trust more of what is there, right? Because if we look at practices like meditation, right, it's great now that we have so much science around how it actually changes the brain. But meditation is a 5,000-year-old practice. It has existed and it has been changing people's lives all along. But now so many more people are able to come to it because it feels more tangible. My goal really is like there are so many other practices out there like that from the same civilizations or same groups or same texts, which included meditation, and more of them are being studied, and more of them are being like becoming accessible to people so that they can start using resources beyond that what they might be aware of to work on changing their life, to feeling happier, to feeling just good. Yeah.
How do you enable people like that, people more on the not on the spiritual side, so they're not so open or not knowing about what is beyond the science? So if I came to you with a huge burnout and I have all the wrong impressions what you have. Like I depend my happiness on external conditions about getting a promotion or whatever it is. And I come to you, I'm like, help me out. I'm losing my mind.
Yes.
How do you bridge that gap to spirituality, and how can you make me happy?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Was it is a process, and it starts for a couple of reasons. For example, if you're someone who's not inclined towards spirituality, starting there is not going to get through to you, right? And the other thing is for someone who is in burnout, their body is also in the state of right always being in stress mode, and you really have to start there. That's the other thing. We all tend to start with the mind, but the mind will keep fighting the mind. So rewiring the mind is actually very hard when the body is in this state of like survival. So I actually start with the body, with the nervous system regulation. And once you regulate your nervous system, that's when you become much more open to other ideas and concepts. And the first half of working with them is very like evidence based and um, observed, measured practices. And the great thing is more and more of that is part of our of science these days. And then after that, once you've seen the benefits, once you've achieved the benefits, right, and you're seeing that modern science is saying humming helps the vagus nerve, which is the nerve from the brain to all the important organs. And that's when it's like when that's not regulated, that impacts all of our body functions, right? And humming is also a practice that has existed for thousands of years and is really an ancient practice. Once you've experience the benefits of it, you don't need that much proof in the future when there are other practices that are from that, again, a realm that you may not be aware of, but you're already experiencing the benefits. So then you're just much more open to tell me more. This has helped me so far. What else is out there that will help me? And that's where the identity work, the work of connecting internally, all of that is very much second part of the program. That's just from a body and mind perspective, we cannot jump there. So just following a journey really helps. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, and you briefly touched upon connections. We couldn't talk much about it, but is that, the value of connections when you got to know like connections are so important, is that what gave birth to Cedar and Branch, or, what was the real idea behind it?
Oh, so Cedar and Branch came into being very much born out of my personal journey. Motherhood was a very challenging experience for me. Becoming a mother, it was not a smooth transition at all. And it was very stark going from like being very successful and very in control of my life in the corporate world to like motherhood sort of just everything turned upside down, inside out, and was very hard. And what brought me back out of it was that connecting back to the basic ancient practices, bringing well-being into my life, teaching it to my son. And there was this desire that more of it should exist for families, because sometimes you think about the things in life that bother you, right? Like why things are a certain way. And that is something that bothered me internally a lot, that kids are so filled with joy, yet parents can be so burdened at that time in life. Early parenthood is very hard in modern life, especially without the support there. That 66%, two-thirds of the parents, which honestly, from what I see, feels like that number is low, are
Mhm.
experiencing burnout, right? At a time while raising children who are filled with joy, who live like an embodiment of how you're supposed to live life in the moment, present, in flow, in joy, right? So that disconnect between parents being burnt out while being with kids who are embodying how we should be living, that's
Yeah.
something that really bothers me. So I think and that was my experience. I was I was struggling while
No,
in
I totally feel that. I'm a new mom, a 9 months old mom, and I totally relate to what you're saying. And it does bother me, but I'm so happy that something like this exists already, thanks to you.
so yeah, it was a desire to have it, not finding it, and then going ahead and creating that a space where people can come together and in the stage of life where things can be quite challenging, still focus on personal well-being, because that's what then flows outward. outwards, right? And again, it was a personal journey for me. Focusing on myself was not how I was raised. I was very much raised by a very sacrificial mother. So the idea that I have to take care of myself and show up as my best self by focusing on my well-being is really what will create the life around me was that in itself was a journey, because it was every fiber of my being said, no, just keep sacrificing yourself. And when that sacrificing myself led to me completely like sort of collapsing is when I had my wake up call. So I just want to create a space where parents can focus on their well-being and they can focus on the connection to themselves, to their partner, and to their family. And from there, everything sort of just ripples outwards.
Wow, I'm speechless beyond this. Ozan, please take over.
It reminded me of your experience, how you were talking in our guilt episode, and I mean that's such a such a mindset change you need there, right? To go from there to be completely sacrificial, give 100% or even more, to
It just
realizing
makes
that
me go back to our guilt episode, first episode of the season titled Guilt. And I was blabbering in that episode. I was just talking about mom's guilt throughout. And Ozan was like, I can't relate.
I understand. I understand. But I understand because the feeling of guilt is so common. Actually, the impact of it is so common. Like we all feel guilt somehow, and we have the same impact of the same impact in the body, for example. So, but that's like all the learned cultural impact or cultural norms about how you should act as a mother. I think that really like puts some sort of tunnel vision on you that you are supposed to be this way. But once you realize that actually, if you don't give 100%, you'll be more efficient in making the others happy around you. That's a mind switch.
It is a huge mind switch, right? But it is like instead of putting that 100% outside, it's like you're supposed to put it inside first. And then when it flows out, you're full and you're filling others' cups and your cup stays full. I think that's the big difference. When you keep pouring into others' cup, your cup ends up empty. And after a while, you cannot sustain it. But when you start by filling your cup and that flows into the cups of people around you, that's a beautiful cycle that can continue and doesn't get interrupted with collapse or burnout or other things. And then guilt, it's funny, right? So my decision to like really make guilt not part of my life, for me, a turning point was when I realized that on the emotional scale, right? Again, I believe there's no good or bad. It's what serves you and what doesn't serve you, and different emotions are there. As a human, we're here to experience all the different emotions. But for the longest time, I didn't realize guilt actually sits like right at the bottom of the emotional scale. That's how low it is. It is at the bottom of the emotional scale. And then joy and appreciation are on the other end of it. And I think it was just that realization that guilt is insidious. It will like steal away all your joy, all your happiness. Was a reason to like I'm now very conscious of when we, because we have this tendency, right? We make the choice, like let's say I'm going to eat the cake. We eat the cake and we guilt ourselves over eating the cake, so we don't even enjoy the cake, right? So it's very much make the choice, either eat the cake and fully
It
enjoy it.
overbalances the joy, right?
Yeah.
So in
Or
the end,
like
you
if
end
you're
up
choosing
lower.
not to, yeah. So it's just like we make the choice and then add guilt on top of the choice and don't even enjoy that choice that we made for enjoyment. We wanted to eat the cake because we thought we would enjoy it, and then we added all that guilt and did not even enjoy it and had the calories. So, right, pick one. Enjoy the cake or don't eat it.
Right. And I remember I was once very much in the achieve, perform, prove loop. And I ignored all the whispers of my body telling me that, and until those whispers became screams, I did not really pay heed to that. And suddenly something happened and I just, I put my resignation, and then the next day I felt so free. I just I just felt that, I can conquer anything now. It just made me feel that, all the shackles around me have been just torn apart, and now I can do whatever I want to. And that's when my book happened. Have
Mhm.
you tried doing nothing? It was during the lockdown, and and I think that book just every time I see that I have done something like that, it just makes me feel, it just makes me go back to self compassion. It makes me feel that, I used to love myself, and I still love myself.
Mhm.
And I think this is the mission which you have been working on, to raise the happiness of humanity.
Mhm.
And it means it in my opinion, I think it just means helping people remember that they are allowed to feel good, that joy is their birthright, not a reward,
Ye-
and not something that you get out of, crossing these levels.
You know,
So happy people always ripple that energy outward, isn't it?
yes, absolutely. I feel like we all know people, right, where their presence is all that's needed to raise the vibration of the room and the energy of the room. That's I call them the thermostat people, like the
Mhm.
ones who walk into the room and they set the temperature of the room versus
Mhm.
a lot of us are we walk into the room and we take on the energy of the room, right?
Mhm.
Like one of the goals in life is to be the thermostat, and I found that very helpful in parenting as well. I actually read that quote in parenting once, with "Be the thermostat, not the thermometer." When kids are having a hard time and experiencing all sorts of big emotions, we tend to then just take on their emotions versus set the bar where they need to be and they'll meet you there. But absolutely, I think it's just this idea that we have to prove, that we have to achieve, and then we will be worthy is the root cause in many ways of why we are all on the hamster wheel, running,
Mhm.
never arriving. It's if we are able to take the pause like you did when the whispers became the screams,
Mhm.
and then we step off that hamster wheel, then we
Right.
can reconnect. And then I love the reference to self-compassion because, again, it's become a bit driven by marketing where there's a lot of focus on self-care, but self-care is so superficial in some ways, right? Like you're not going to get happiness, or you're not going to even get out of burnout. You're not even going to feel better with a massage once a month.
Totally. Yes.
So it's like you need self-compassion, which is being kind to yourself, and then self-love, which is truly loving yourself, which again was a journey for me as well. I used to think I loved myself, but then I realized the world loved me. I was always showered with praise and appreciation, but I excelled in school and college and in my corporate life. And then when that went away with motherhood, and I realized the only voice, the biggest voice around me was the one in my head. I realized how critical that voice was it wasn't being balanced out by all the external appreciation. Unfortunately, for most of us, of the thoughts we have, 80 to 95% are negative thoughts. And our brains, again, are wired for negativity. As a primitive being, that's how we survived. Really remembering the berries that made you sick was very, very important. So that's why we hyper focus on the negative. So again, it's being aware of the way we are wired and making the conscious choices to act differently, to choose differently.
Mhm.
I think that's
So
a
well.
very crucial point that actually so many people are struggling with self-compassion. Partially because you said the whole self-care industry is giving really wrong impressions about how we can care about ourselves, but how we can care about ourselves truly is self-compassion. But that's one of the hardest things to do, especially because when you said, you have so much voice in your head, and actually most of them are like what you think others will see you, and that's why we compare ourselves with the others because we see ourselves how we think others would see us, and then we want to reach some sort of expectation that is not even ours. So it's really difficult to filter those out and focus on your actual inner voice. Uh, but what was your experience getting to that level that you're so self-compassionate enough? How can you achieve that?
So, can I give a roundabout answer to that instead of these are the steps to it? Can I
Yes,
like
yes,
say yes
as
with
you like it.
all right. So let's say these are the, can we see it? I don't know. I just made 2 points, right?
Yeah,
So if this is where we are, being very critical of ourselves, and this is where we want to go, this is where we are self-compassionate, how do you think we get there?
definitely not a straight line, is there?
Well, it's not a straight line. I think we know that.
No,
So it's not a straight line, is it? And I think a lot of us might think it's something like this, like some ups and downs, some
that's what I was
highs and some
thinking.
lows,
Much
right?
more steeper ups and downs.
It's more steeper ups and downs. But the way I see it, again, I don't have any scientific proof for it, but I'll just draw it out how I see it. And this just really helps because, again, in this world where we love quick fixes, where everything and everyone's sharing a story of how they change things overnight, or how, again, speed is how we want to do everything. The journey actually looks like this. So this
Oh,
is my point. So that
aspirally.
is why, have you ever experienced as you're working on yourself, you feel sometimes you feel frustrated, why am I back here again? Right? I thought I worked through this and I'm here again, right? Because what really is happening is you're not there again, you're at a slightly expanded version of that. And then another slightly expanded version. And then, so you're going through these loops, you're growing, you are expanding, and you keep coming across similar challenges at a higher level. Like sometimes I think of it as like kids, if they start in math in first grade and did a math test, which in the US they don't even have tests, and then they got to second grade and they were like, "What, math again?" And then they got to third grade and they said, "Math again?" But like, yes, if there will be math, it will be at a higher level. It'll keep growing. So I think more people need to understand that the journey is definitely not a straight line, not even ups and downs, but really this ever expanding spiral. And you might feel like you're back there again, but it's not that same place. It's a higher expanded version of that place. Was That's why we're here. We're here to always expand. And the great thing about this is if you were to just go from here to here, you've missed out everything here, 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 right? That's not
Hmm.
happening. You are expanding in many ways as
Yes.
you're going through this journey. So sorry, that's why I said I didn't want to give a straightforward answer of these are the steps was
So this was beautiful, and I think I'm going to listen to this episode again and again as in different phases of my life. And this is so, you are totally justifying the title "Science of Happiness." You're making us so happy and leaving us with a smile. Uh, well, for anyone listening right now who is not feeling good, like who's feeling just numb or overwhelmed, what would you say to them right now?
so right now, I think self-compassion, if they can bring it up for themselves, would be the thing that would help them a lot, right? Because a lot of times when you are in burnout, you blame yourself for being in burnout. And then so self-compassion, you're like, you are here and it's not a place where you want to blame yourself. Understanding that the journey out is not going to be, it took you a while to get into this space of burnout, right? It was over months, weeks, years. So the
Mhm.
journey out will take time. And starting, if they can, starting with the body and the nervous system regulation versus jumping straight to the mind. And definitely do not jump to productivity hacks and calendar and time blocking, was doing more of the same more efficiently is not what will get you out of burnout. Resetting your internal body and everything that's happening inside over years of having accumulated that stress is what will start getting you out of burnout. Because what happens is this is a concept that the Nagowski sisters made popular, and I love how they explain it, is stressor versus stress, right? So stressor is what's causing you the stress, and stress response is what's happening in your body biologically and physiologically. And those are in the modern world two completely different things. So what that means is our ancient biology, the stressor was a threat, an animal. Stress
Mhm.
response was adrenaline and cortisol making you ready to run because the body was expecting you're going to use your muscles a lot. So there was the beginning, you had the stress response, you had the stress, then you had the response, you ran, and there was an end. If you escaped, you jumped, you celebrated. And then the body got the signal as well, stop releasing the cortisol, go back to normal state. So both were completely in sync. In the modern world, the stressor is a terrible boss, being stuck in traffic. But the stress response is still the same. All that release of cortisol, all that like this expectation that we'll be doing something with our bodies, which we never do. And then the stressor, and we focus on how do we fix the stressor. But what happens is all the stress, all the cortisol, all of that is accumulated in our body, and we never release that because we never have. Do we come home and then jump up and down that we are done with traffic or we don't have to deal with our boss anymore? For the rest of the day, we don't. So that stress is what has turned into the chronic stress. Our bodies are flooded with cortisol, and we've never given the body that signal to stop. And that becomes chronic stress. And from chronic stress, it becomes burnout. And then from burnout, it becomes that disassociation, numbness as like the final stage where the body tries to sort of shut down a bit to try and protect you. So that was my long way of trying to express the importance of working with the body and the nervous system and giving signals to the nervous system to relax and to that we are, because again, we live in this world where the reason for the stress and what's happening in our body are completely in disconnect. So we're never giving the body the signal that it's okay, we can stop the cortisol. We can. So.
Great. So lovely. Well, I think thank you for your heart and wisdom today, Rachna. And you have given us such gold in this that I'm totally going to revisit it. I'm sure Ozan feels the same.
It was super insightful.
Yes, and I'm so excited to, so I'm so excited for our listeners already who are going to listen to it and they are going to say wow too. And I'm super excited on their behalf right now. And would you like to, close this by saying any other words of wisdom or, anything about your initiative of Cedar and Branch, or maybe about if you want to talk about, how they can reach out to you through your social media or anything? Most
Absolutely.
welcome. This is your space.
Thank you. No, first off, thank you, Ozan and Henna, for having me. It was an absolutely wonderful conversation. I think that's what I'm here for, to just sort of be that breadcrumb on that trail for people to, as they're working, was a lot of us are working towards feeling better about creating a life where we feel good and others around us feel good. So I just want to be a breadcrumb on that trail. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And I can be reached through the website, which is cedarandbranch.com, or on Instagram, which is Cedar and Branch. And I
Links
think
are down below.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful, perfect. And then I think the final thing would be, let's just tie it up with self-compassion, that inner voice. Every time you hear it, being negative or critical, just being aware of it is something to celebrate. Because a lot of us, through a lot of our life, haven't even been aware of how negative we are to ourselves. So if you're at that step where you're aware that you have this terrible inner critic, celebrate that. Because there was a point where when you were not even aware of that, and awareness is the first step. If you're able to interrupt it, celebrate that. Because interruption is the next step. Maybe the voice comes back, but it's okay. And then if you're able to replace it with a kinder voice and be self-compassionate, of course, celebrate that. So maybe the final word of wisdom is compassion and celebration. We all need a little more celebration in our life. So it's something we actually started with the family every Friday. We get like these champagne glasses and fill them with sparkling water, and we all just go around and share one thing that we're celebrating for the week. So maybe that's what,
Oh, wow.
let's all celebrate something. And we have things to celebrate. Our negative brain doesn't let us focus on it as much as it focuses on the not good stuff. So
Well, I will celebrate this episode. It was an amazing one.
And to our listeners, if this episode stirred something in you too, share it with someone you love. That's how, we keep growing this circle of mindful, curious, and joyful humans. So until next time, we'll see you soon again, Rachna. I'm sure I'm coming back again to record something about motherhood with you.
I would love.
All right, then. Thank you so much for your time and wonderful energy. Until
Thank
next time, bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.